The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
There's only one blood, cause it ain't no sense in us trampling on the stones. It's us, down to the bone. Blood is thick, waters were known well, cousins were kept apart, mothers were often memories. Fathers were not favorites on the farm, for he could do some harm, he could wreck the master scheme, for he brothers could dream.
Homeboy by Sunchi Ali. Welcome to the Qumran Report. May the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, coming at you live from Morris Media Studio. Our call-in number is 1-323-293-3375. This week on the Qumran Report, our topic is Let's Talk Racism. You know, almost 100 years ago, W.E.B. Du Bois said the problem of the 20th century is a problem of the color line. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the topics we will talk about is the meaning of racism, the history of racism. We're going to talk about a book called Plural But Equal by Dr. Harold Cruz. We're going to talk about racism and economics. We're going to talk about the dual ethnic economic communities, which is the makeup of Los Angeles. We're also going to talk about the invention of the white and black race. And we're going to read from Dr. Theodore Allen's clip. And we're going to talk about the general term of race in the United States of America. And then also in the latter part of the show, we have a special song from our special guest, looking forward to it. Now, here to talk about all of that today, I would like to welcome we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Let's start over here.
Good morning. I'm Sonia Bowser, and I have come all the way from Riverside to talk to you guys about racism, including what I experienced today, so it should be interesting. Mm-hmm. I do a show called, hi, good morning. I do a show called Clubhouse Radio. Before that, I did Sunset and Gumbo. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll come back and get into the details right after the introduction.
Oh. Hi, I'm Anaya J. Roots. I'm a singer, songwriter, and activist, and thanks for having me.
Okay.
I'm Flat, and been around the Skid Row community for a while. Done a few things. Skid Row, plays, music. That's basically it.
Okay. We also got Bobby going to join us a little later, Bobby Buck. Okay, let's start off. Let's start right over here, and let's. What exactly is racism? What's the meaning of that to you?
To me,
we'll go around. Mm-hmm.
It's probably different to me because I'm of mixed race, black and Puerto Rican. To me, racism is where you just feel superior for some reason because you are of a different race than me. Mm-hmm. I can't say because you're white, because a lot of different races are racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, you just mentioned about what's the difference between black and Puerto Rican?
To me, nothing. It's culture.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I grew up on the East Coast in Philadelphia, and even when you go to Puerto Rico, Cuba, places like that, you're Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what your color is. Mm-hmm. So I grew up around all kinds of shades of brown, and we shared the same culture. Mm-hmm. You know, so
you see a big difference?
Language, obviously. Some, you know, you speak Spanish. But, you know, we were all dropped off when we came from Africa. We were dropped off in the islands in many different places.
Do you notice the difference between the relationship between, say, African American descendants of slaves in America and the Hispanic community or Latino community on the East Coast as opposed to how they get along out here?
I do. I do. I've been here since 1983, and when I got here, they didn't really know what is a Puerto Rican. So I was Puerto Rican, and I'm brown, and maybe you speak Spanish. What are you? It was I know this coming from where I came from in Philadelphia. It was a big deal here, where back there, you know, city of brotherly love. I didn't care. I didn't care. But when I got here, it was in Crenshaw, 43rd and Crenshaw is where I grew up. My father was a police officer here for 30 years. And to me, it was, you had to be Mexican. Well, what if I were Belize or Belizean or from South America? When I got here in 83, that's all they knew. Oh, are you Mexican? No. Well, Puerto Rico, what's that? Are you black? I'm like, well, yeah. Okay. You know, by culture.
I want to come back. I want to get a definition from racism, and then I want to come back and get into your background a little bit more. Talk about your experience. Let's move over. What's racism to you? How do you define that?
Well, sort of like what Sonia said, one race feeling inferior or superior than the other, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, all right, I bet you will. Flat. Sorry, I got to get used to that. Sure.
Supposing the same answers they gave you. Oh, sorry. Supposing the same answers they gave you, but yeah, I guess just the way another race treats people, but is it racism when your own race treats you that way?
Well, that's a great question. Anybody want to talk about that?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Because that kind of goes to what I was saying, where I said what racism is, but you notice I didn't say when it's white people. You know, I said it's because many races, different races, are racist. My grandpa, God bless his soul, was an old racist black man. But I understand why now. I know where he came from. I know why he may have not changed with the times and remembered drinking from a colors-only water fountain. So he wasn't all Philadelphia, and before that they came from the South. My grandmother, May Bowser, was from South Carolina. So, yeah, I do think so. Because we have the color thing. You know, we have what shade of black are you? You know, that was always confusing to me being a biracial child. Why does that matter? Aren't we all of the same culture? And so I learned racism very early. My best girlfriend growing up, hi Ernestine, if you're watching anywhere, that's her. She's still in Camden, New Jersey. She was beautiful, brown like you, actually browner than you, beautiful. And I was this little yellow mixed girl. I thought she was beautiful because her skin was perfect to me. But when we were together one day, a photographer came in elementary school, and he was going to take Ernestine's picture, but he stopped and saw me and took my picture. I felt some kind of way about that, like, she's beautiful too. And I felt that he was saying that I was beautiful. And from there, I started to learn the color thing in our own race. You know, the brown paper bag thing, I'd heard about that from Grandma. But I noticed that I wasn't black enough to play with my black girlfriends. But I didn't speak Spanish, so the Latina girls didn't want to deal with me either. So to me, that's racism, to me. And I learned that early as a child. You know, looking like I do with a beautiful black mother with a beautiful afro crown, it was perfectly picked. They would come and say to my mother, well, where's her? You know, they thought she was my nanny.
I've had that.
That is the most racist bleep.
Yeah.
And I learned that as a child. This is my mother, and she's beautiful.
Okay, let's put some history behind it. I want to read something from
Awesome.
Dr. Theodore Allen. He wrote a classic book, and the book is called The Invention of the White Race. And I recommend everybody who could get the chance to read this book open up and explains a lot the economics and what happened. Theodore William Ted Allen, born August the 23rd, 1919, died January the 19th, 2005. He was an American intellectual writer and activist, best known for his pioneer writing since the 1960s on white skin privilege and the invention of the white race, particularly his seminal Class Struggle and the Origin of Racial Slavery. The Invention of the White Race, published as a pamphlet in 1975 and published the next year in expanded form, he stressed that the white race was invented as a ruling class social control formation. An independent working class scholar, Allen did research for the next quarter of a century to expand and document his ideals, particularly on the relationship of white supremacists to the working class. He published a 2-volume work, The Invention of the White Race, in 1994 and 1997, The Invention of the White Race, Volume 1, Racial Oppression and Social Control, and The Invention of the White Race, The Origin of Racial Suppression in Anglo-America, which explores racial oppression as a system of social control and the origin of racial suppression in Anglo-American. It was republished by Verso Books in a new expanded edition in November 2012. And what makes this such an excellent book is he explained the whole history of the United States as being founded by mostly ex-convicts and homeless people from Europe and London that came over here as what they call bonded servants, and they use the term indentured servant. And he focused in on one incident that is known as Baker's Rebellion. And this happened in 1676. Now, up until that time, you had African indentured servants, bond servants, what they would call. You had German, Irish. You also had black slaves. You had white slaves. You had Irish to Scottish. London had wars, and they took them as slaves. So a lot of them was slavery over here, and a lot of them was in prison. And when they got ready to build the new world, they would send them over here as, over a 7-year period to work off their time, and then they would get 100 acres, etc., like that, money to sell them. But Baker's Rebellion, what happened, a conflict came about needing more land for these bonded servants once they do their 7 years. See, and the land, they were already taking Native Americans' land. So that's what the conflict was about, is that this youngster lawyer named Nathaniel Bacon, he organized over 900 African bondmen, German, Italians, etc., like that. And they took Jamestown. They burned Jamestown, took it for about 9 months. And then once he died, right after that is when the corporation, the power to be, decided that they had to work out another system. And this is when the European basically sold out the African brothers, see. And how they did it is they created a legal term called white. Up until that time, up until the 1680s. You can find that term nowhere in the legal documents. You were either German, European from Germany, Italian, Scottish, etc., like that. And then that led to most of the European ethnic groups falling under the term of legally white, and then most of the blacks, the African and the indentured, became chattel servants, where they could sell them like they could sell animals and stuff. Now that laid the foundation for this whole racial concept. But what you got to remember, at the time, the driving forces was the English-speaking people, the 13, what we learned coming up, all this fallacy that we learned about the 13 original colonies, without realizing that you also had Spain, who had Florida at that time. It was a huge black community there. And they always laid the fabrication to us about the Underground Railroad. That's a fabrication. Because they fabricated that the Underground Railroad went up north when the Underground Railroad was actually running to Florida, to the extent that they created another state called Georgia, an all-white buffer state, in between to keep so many black slaves from running into that direction. Spanish had Florida, but Spanish was a major enemy of the United States, of the 13 original colonies that particular time. And then same thing with New Orleans, same thing with that area. Either Spain or France had that. See, now all of this laid the foundation for this whole racial concept, because what it meant is that there is an economic component to this fallacy. And that's what I want to look at, because I think the biggest laboratory that we have is right here in Los Angeles, because you got every ethnic group that you can think of is out here and how they interact with each other. And one thing that we've seen happen is the whole concept of immigration, the huge illegal immigration that have changed the whole makeup of areas like Watts and Compton, where there used to be a huge African-American population, where we find, where's this African-American population at now? This African-American population is in Skid Row, because when you look at areas like Skid Row, with the madness that they have down there, probably 90% of the people that's living in tents, etc., like that, is African Americans, descendants of the chattel slaves of America. And to me, that's the key element that have to be looked at out here, because I think that's a fallacy of this whole racial thing, to play these two huge groups off against each other. See, and by playing them off against each other, you look at the power base in Los Angeles and who's controlling Los Angeles. It's a small minority group, even though you got this huge Hispanic or Latina and huge African American here. So, anybody want to pick up your thoughts of, since you've been out here, what you've experienced out here from a racial point of view? See, can we get underneath it?
I kind of want to piggyback off of what she was talking about earlier about how they're referring to your mom as your mammy. I've had the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I was telling him earlier, I'm adopted by an all-black family, and I grew up in Compton. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. So you couldn't see, people weren't as open-minded. You know what I'm talking about? People weren't as open-minded. Right. And so, back again, where you were coming from, Compton was, when I was growing up, basically all black. I didn't see anything that looked like me. I didn't see anything that looked like me. And like I was telling you before, I thought I was black because color wasn't discussed in our home. And my parents are in their 80s now. I'm 37. They're in their 80s now. So I told you they came back from Birmingham in Louisiana. And so racism, to me, I've seen it so much. But why do you think it's so bad now? Like it's more prevalent now every day you see something.
Anybody want to pick up on that? Because I got my own theories.
What do you see?
I see a lot. Okay, I see the.
What do you see every day?
Okay, well, I see a lot. I was discussing with you guys on Instagram. There's these famous white models who I thought were black because they were coloring themselves as black with makeup, no joke, and taking over a lot of jobs off of selling the image of being black. You know, I've seen that. You see a lot of.
Do you think
to me,
that's
entitled
racism?
white people.
You think that's racism, what they were doing?
I don't think it's racism. I think it's more of, it's like wearing blackface to me.
So they don't have to hire a black person? I mean, from that perspective?
I think what the girls were doing to me was it's like wearing blackface. Like, be who you are. Be comfortable in your own skin.
Okay, now were they girls that were just doing it on their own, or did they work for a corporation?
No, these are girls that are doing it on their own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could visibly see that they were actually white, and then shades and shades and shades and shades more, now they're black. You know, you could actually see it.
When I started years ago wanting to be an actress, it wasn't cute to be plump. I'm a plus size model as well, a real one who gets on the runway. I started with a group here in LA called Thixotics for the first 4 years, and then I've been independent ever since then. And just in the modeling industry, they did not care for a browner skin. And now it's cool to have our beautiful brown skin and our thick lips and our big booties and just our traits. And so, yeah, you do see that. Even you see them with the hair like mine and braiding it and whatnot. And I don't know if it's necessarily racism that they're doing that. But I agree with you. I don't like the fact that they're getting over. Yeah. You know, pretending. You know, we had what's that young lady, Rachel, whatever her name was.
Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah,
I mean that's the total left there. She just went all out. You know, she just rose to the top. She just, you know, with her fake blackness or whatever it was. But I just think we're coming full circle, and I think there's a certain group that is very fearful. Very, very fearful because they are becoming the minority, this particular group. And us beautiful black, brown, and other shades of color we're the minority. And so when this gentleman who took office recently as our president came in, I think that a lot of people just said, well, if he can do it, we don't have to hold it in anymore. Let's just be who we've been all this time. So I don't think that it's like more. I think we're just seeing it more because they have relaxed. They're all on the internet. They're all in your face. I'm on my way over here. I was a little bit late. I'm sorry about that. But I'm in a gas station, and I'm pulled all the way to the right. The pumps are over here, and there's plenty of room to move up the middle. I'll make it quick. And someone of Arab descent, he was just beeping and beeping. No one knew who he's beeping at. Turns out he gets out of his vehicle, because I'm waiting for someone, and comes and bangs on my window. I said, oh, no. First of all, I'm from Philly, number one, and South Central, and you really shouldn't do that. You could lose your life doing that. And I realized, okay, am I being racist? Because I'm going to judge him now based on the fact that he's Arab, and I'm thinking that because he sees a woman, he feels he can do that, and because I'm black, he feels he could do that. But my son came out and said, what are you... And there was no fight. We spoke like adults because apparently he felt I was in his way. And the nice Marine gentleman who happened to be Caucasian, but he's a Marine. He fought for this country. He's American. I'm American. We're all Americans. What is it that you think I'm doing? Well, you're blocking the way. No, he told him, you have plenty of room, sir. Please just go. I think that he did it because I was a woman and black. That he felt he could just come up and bang on the window and tell me to move and get my car out in not so nice a way, by the way, until other men came around and said, no, you can't do that. You can't treat her that way.
Let me.
I think that was kind of racist.
Let me ask a question.
I could be wrong
here. Why do you think so many African Americans ride with the Democratic Party instead of the Republican Party?
That is such a good question, but I think we've been confused. I mean, didn't we start out Republican?
Start out Republican. We start not only did we start out
Republicans,
and I always say this because I have to explain people why I can never vote Democratic. I would can't be no Democrat. I would either be independent or Republican. And the reason I could never be a Democrat is because coming out of the Mississippi Delta and knowing that the Democrats are the one that created the KKK. Democrats are the one that would fought for slavery. They were the Confederates.
So I think the answer to that question would then be ignorance, our ignorance.
Ignorance. And what we get ready to get into now, the whole concept of economics, because what happened, what I found out, I was writing this play about my high school, historic high school in Greenville, Mississippi, and when the Civil Rights Bill came out in 1968, it was a writer that went along with that to do a study on the equality of education in the United States of America. And one of the cities and high school they picked was my high school. And out of that study, it's called a Coleman Report. And a lot of people don't even know about this report. It's called a Coleman Report because it's written by Robert Coleman, who's the top sociologist of that time. He also helped develop MK Ultra program, CIA program. But anyway, they developed what I found out to be a lie by the results by saying that black people, descendants of slaves of America, learn better in the presence of whites. And my whole thing was, where you get your evidence from? Because we've always been segregated. We never had a chance to go there. But that was one of the starting points because that's what laid the foundation for busing, and started all of that. But what I want to lead to out here, in the 20s, Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote an excellent book called The Miseducation of the Negro. He pointed out then that up prior to that, you had Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who pushed the tithes concept from the Bible called the talented tenth. He believed that if 10% of descendants of slaves of America got an education, they would reach back for the 90 and pull them up. But Carter G. Woodson, he pointed out that his results showed if you got a Western education, you're going to have more in term with mainstream society than the other 90. And I think that's what you're seeing happening now. That's why it's hard to explain these black caucus, these Democrats, and all that kind of stuff like that. And you can just look at situation where after the so-called conscious 60s, when we had so many black mayors and black congressmen, even out here, we had Mayor Bradley out here and all that kind of stuff. But when you look back and do the results, you see that all of these areas where you had black mayors in these cities, Philly, areas like that, Wilson Good, it was back then.
Our
Philly.
Capital, D.C., my cousin's the mayor there now,
like
Bowser, Muriel Bowser.
Yeah, the area, Detroit and all like that, all of these areas,
terrible.
Economically suffering, and we need to find out why. And this is why when you look at Los Angeles, and I look at Los Angeles as a laboratory, because I think where we at in capitalism now is what you call the dual ethnic economic communities. When you look at, you got Chinatown, you got Koreatown, even the Latinos is developing their own community, with the exception of one group, and they're suffering for it all over. You got one group that fail to control the economic life of their community. Even the area where we're sitting in right now, called Lamert Park, is trying to head into that particular direction. And I want to say one more thing. I want to open it up because I think one of the reasons we have so much tension between the Latino Hispanic community and the African American community is the prison industrial complex here in California. Because when you study that history, you find out that an alliance was made between what they call the Serenos, which is the Southern Hispanic inside the prison system, and the Nazi lowriders. Here, you don't have this relationship up north, but you got it in these prisons down south. See, and most of these individuals is coming back to the street. They bring that to the communities that we're dealing with right now. And you can look in the area back in your state where you just had the Nazi that go up into the temple and all that kind of stuff and shoot up in the synagogue.
Yeah, back there
and
in
shoot up the
Pennsylvania.
people and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you think about that type of racism, anybody want to speak on that? Because that was white nationalism, we want to call it, versus the Jewish community. Yeah. What do you think is behind that? Because African Americans are not even in that particular equation, even though they was in South Carolina when that happened.
My first thing that comes to mind is just evil. I'm not an overly religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. And that's just evil. They're evil. Those kinds of people, they're just evil. You go into a holy place, whether you believe in that or not, it's still a holy place, and you go in there and you kill people because why? You think you're better than them because they're Jewish and you're white national. I really think all of them are insane. I do.
The same individual in Thousand Oaks that went into the club a couple of weeks ago, the Marine, and shot him up.
Was that mental illness?
Would he fit under the same?
I wonder if some of them are just insane. I do. I wonder if some of them, if we're dealing with quite a combination of stuff, which is, some people are racist, but some people, are just crazy. And we're so politically correct, we're afraid to say some things sometimes. And sometimes people are just crazy. And we got some crazy people that get access to guns. And they use whatever excuse they use, sometimes racism, sometimes there's so-called superiority in their head. And I'm going to go to a church and kill up these beautiful black people that are in the church because, they're black and they're lower than me. That's insane to me.
That's insane, but you call it crazy, but I think it's taught. It's not necessarily crazy. I mean, it's an act of insaneness or craziness, but it's something that child was taught. He was taught hatred, which you're exactly right about that being evil. Okay. I am a Christian man in Christ Jesus' name. I believe in God, and it's pure evil, but it's what makes the world go round.
You got to have the positive and the negative.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like, what do you expect? Or what do we expect?
That's good.
Okay. How about? I want to talk about your history. How did you get to Los Angeles? Anybody want to open that up? Your journey and what you're doing now in the organizations that you're involved with, trying to make a difference.
You want me to start from the beginning or start now? Well, what I just did, the organization that I'm in with now is with, you guys know her as DJ Silky D. Her name is Daphne. And the Universal Hip Hop.
The piano player? Keyboard?
The DJ. Ladies,
yes.
hip hop's
Yes.
first lady
Yes.
DJ.
Yes.
So we're right over here at 1820 Florence, if that okay to do. And
Yes.
it's the 5 Points Youth Foundation, and we just had a big old festival over there. We were feeding the community and just welcoming kids to come and dance and whatnot. We're just trying to reach out to the community, start somewhere. The problems we have are so big, people can get overwhelmed and give up and not do anything. And I live by, you know what? If I can't do anything more than just help one person, at least I've started somewhere, you know, with what I'm doing. So what I'm doing now is just trying to help. You know, regardless of Hollywood, my real job is a nurse, and my real spirit is nursing and helping others and seeing us all win. And this hate and this stuff that's going on is really, it's killing us. It's killing us. So I don't like to see it. So whatever I can do within the organization that I'm in right now to help the community, be it feeding them. We're going to have a blanket drive soon. We're going to have a sock drive and things like that. How I got here is I grew up in the East Coast, Philadelphia. My mother and father met out here because she would visit. We have family. And eventually one day they just decided, you know what, we're going to be together. We're going to fly back there. He did. And then they drove across country. I was a little bit afraid because they left me. So now here I am around as you with my beautiful black family, and I look like this. But I don't know that this is different, really. I wasn't taught that. You know, I love you, and I'm not looking at your skin. And people say, Sonia, that's so naive. That's not realistic. Well, I'm sorry. That's who I am. I just believe that there are bad people in every race. So I try not to look at that. But I got here, and we lived off of Stocker and Victoria here. I went to Audubon. I went to Crenshaw. I went to Westchester for a little bit, and then back to Crenshaw. And I became a nurse. Medical assistant, then a nurse, and at the same time I got into acting and modeling and stuff like that. And I really experienced a lot of racism in the entertainment industry, which I was surprised at, because you have all these, you know, big Hollywood stars who are, you know, they look like us, they're black, they're brown, and you just expect us to do some things we really shouldn't do. I was always against, well, you can play a hooker or a prostitute, whatever. Why do I have to play that? I'm smart. Why can't I do something else? Maybe it's because I'm fat. Or is it because I'm black? Or is it classism? But that's a whole nother conversation. But that's how I got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then let me just say this about the whole hidden history of the black actors out here.
Okay.
Because they have a big responsibility for the situation that our communities is in all over the United States. Because you used to have what you call the Federal Theater Project. That was in the 30s. And that's when the United States really had a national theater company. You had a Negro theater, Yiddish theater, Latino theater, just all over, and the government funded them. But what happened, most of you just had the Russian Revolution in 1917 that changed things, because that pitted communism, the communal economic system, versus capitalism, private enterprise. So most of your intellectuals and your artists, they prefer that kind of system. See, and so what happened is that laid the foundation for what they call the Red Scare, when they start driving all of the communists. Ronald Reagan, who became governor and president, of course,
A former actor.
he was the head of the union, right? And he was one of the guys that sold out his actor buddies and stuff like that. Most of them destroyed their career because they were communists. But what happened after they destroyed the Federal Theater Project, you had a lot of your white playwrights, Eugene O'Neill, Kenny McGowan, Robin Eric Jones. They formed what they called the Provincetown Playwrights Theater, right? and they develop it around writers. And Kenny McGowan, he would come out here and set up modern Hollywood. That's how come McGowan, you go on the campus of UCLA, see McGowan Hall, named after him. After they destroyed the Federal Theater Project, then the blacks had a choice of forming a national Negro theater company, right? But the argument came on whether it should be based upon the playwrights or the actors. See, and the actors went their way, started doing the ministry and all that kind of silly stuff and all that kind of stuff, and we never recovered from that. That's why the actors, these black actors, they got a big debt to play to the black community in terms of if we were able to put that black theater company, that Negro theater company together, then we would have been, when they had like Robert Johnson that started BTE and all of that kind of stuff like that, that would have been the orbit for, we would have been centralized and controlling all of that. The only thing that we had that was centralized then, until they turned it almost into what was the Nation of Islam, because it was in every city and it was centralized and self-supporting and all that kind of stuff like that. I just want to bring that in. Another element I want to ask, I could never understand why the black community out here failed to make Spanish a part of their second language. You know, because when you look at it now, that's from an economic point of view, and what's happening here in Los Angeles on the West Coast, most of these jobs that require bilingual and all that kind of stuff like that. And then you get, I couldn't understand, even though I knew what happened in the 60s when you had all of these militant groups, and they pushed they pushed them in the direction of Swahili, almost a useless language in terms of economics, not like Spanish. And I think that bridge, you know, that bridge of communication would have looked so different. And I still think that's the direction that we're going to have to go in. We're going to have to create some kind of barrier or some kind of connecting point between the Latino community, and I'm not talking about the upper class bourgeois Latinos like we're talking about the bourgeois African Americans, right? We got to get them out of the way because they part of the mainstream society. We got to understand that. If we're going to make change, this 90% is going to have to make things change, see? But as long as they can keep the Latino community and the African American community separated, they're going to be at the bottom. We're going to have all kind of skid rows.
I got to disagree with you.
Okay.
There, I believe that this is America. I believe that when someone tells me I have to know Spanish to get a job, I think that's racism. I believe that who could have foresaw that the Hispanic population would climb to the heights that they have. So I that's when you say learn Spanish over Swahili, which, you know, I think Swahili was probably just a black pride thing over learning Spanish, you know, because of the mother country or blah, blah, blah. But I don't believe that there's any, and I know it sounds bad, but I don't think there's any hope for us here in California. If we learn Spanish or not, I believe that black people as a whole are not grabbing hold of anything. The Latino and Spanish population, they're go-getters. They're grabbing everything. I don't think they're taking it.
Hold on to each other.
Yeah. I don't think they're taking it. I think it's being given to them. They're organizing. Now you have, like you say, the hierarchy, organizing and showing the lower people, you know, classes, I'll say, how to organize And it's a wave that is not going to be or a fire that can't be quenched. Now, them looking at us as a people, they don't have to respect us. Why? Why do they have to respect us at any level? So when you say us getting along or whatever like that, we've already been kicked to the curb, in my opinion. So why should they have to respect us?
You think Latin people has kicked what? Black people to the curb?
No, I believe the Latino population or Hispanic, their numbers are huge. They don't have to.
They are the majority.
They're the majority, and what are they doing? They're beautiful. I'm not trying to be racist or anything.
No.
They're beautiful, beautiful people. You go in their stores. They're managed well. They're holding on to it. I remember back in the 80s when Manchester was all black owned. I don't know if they were owned businesses, but they were managed black back in the 80s. McDonald's and all the businesses was that Manchester, yeah. But what happened to that? So you go into the Latinos, they're like grabbing these businesses and they're climbing and they're building, and they don't. And I mean, this is just my opinion. Why do they respect us? Because we learn Spanish? We don't.
Well, let me, and then somebody else.
I mean, are you getting that, or
No. I agree with you, and I'm Latin. I don't speak Spanish, and I remember every time all the Latin people would come to me instead of speaking to my family, because we used to give away food. We used to feed the homeless, and they would come up to me, start speaking Spanish. I would get so mad instantly because I couldn't speak it. I look like this, but I can't speak a lick of it. And even if I did learn Spanish, I still think my culture wouldn't accept me the way they are. Now, and I'm going to tell you this, my husband is black. And where we live, in Watts, predominantly a Mexican neighborhood. This is my very first time ever living in a Mexican neighborhood, ever.
Well, every neighborhood's Mexican.
No. I've only lived in the suburbs around the white people.
Oh, okay.
I have not lived I've never lived in a neighborhood full of Mexicans my whole entire life.
Inner city.
I lived in the hood when it was growing up.
Ghetto.
It was all black and Samoan in Compton when I was growing up. It wasn't
nothing
no
wrong
Mexican.
with the ghetto. Ain't nothing wrong with the ghetto.
But what I was going to say is these kids used to speak to me every day. These little kids, like 9, 8, 7, something, they speak to me every day. When they saw my husband, they stopped speaking to me, and I couldn't understand why. So one day, they threw a ball over to my house, and they were like, "Why is your husband black?" And I'm like, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because I don't see color lines. That's why." But that had to be taught in their home. No 9-year-old little girl is going to be like, "Why is your husband black?" You get what I'm saying? I still get racism from my own culture, and when I was growing up, black girls who didn't understand me, I fought a lot every day.
Yeah, that's how I dealt.
Every day.
I wasn't black
let
enough.
me just think. Let me just point out where I think two major points where I think it's important for our next generation, our young people, to learn Spanish from a historical point of view. Number one, when you look at when they always talking about the huge, large Hispanic. And I like to use the term Hispanic instead of Latino, because Latino hit you Latin all the way back to the Catholicism. But the fact, when you look at those numbers, one thing that they fail to tell you is the majority of those is people of African descent when they're talking about those huge majority all over. That's one thing. And then the next thing is the importance of the Spanish language. We got to understand that the Spanish language through Islam, right? Islam and Arabic is what educated the modern world. Through Islamic Spain for 800 years, educated all of the European nations, and also because of the Spanish language and the Arabic language, it was able to translate all of the Greek classics that they had lost. See, it's deeper than we're sitting here. We have to position the next generations of the descendants of the chattel slaves of America. That's what I'm talking about. And out here, I keep pointing out that this is a laboratory because you got all of these ethnic communities, and the best example that I've seen, and to me, this is the model that I think any of the ethnic communities should be following, is the Koreans. When you look at the Koreans they're not caught up with the fallacy of politics. How many Koreans do you see down there on the city council? But look at all of the economic property that they control.
Because they're about their business.
They're about their business.
They speak Spanish.
And
Well,
I want to.
yeah,
Yes, they do. And I want to go. I want to touch before we get too far away from it.
Yeah.
My turn and my thoughts on the language thing, because I was always taught with my little old self that when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. My grandfather, Tito Medina, knew when he came here many, many years ago as an immigrant from Puerto Rico that you better know English. You better know English when you come here. So I kind of disagree with you on some things, but I hear where it's going. So I probably would change some things about my opinion. But generally, no. California is saturated. It's not anywhere else because, again, I'm from somewhere else. So I see it a little bit more. I don't like when you send paperwork home for my child, my son, who is clearly black. He's dark brown and beautiful, and he's black. He does not speak Spanish. And you got to give me 2 copies of everything now. That's a waste of money. To me, that's a waste of money. I go and scribble on it, and I guess that's racist. I'm being racist against half my own people, I guess. But I don't think you should have everything in Spanish and English. When in Rome, do as they do. When in America, you need to know English.
Let me ask you this.
I don't want you to leave your culture. I just want you to prepare yourself to come here. When you come from Korea, China, and all them, you know your language plus English. I am really not in agreement with forcing a second language, because what if you speak French? My father, being a police officer, 30 years here in L.A., grew up right here on 54th and Crenshaw. He had to speak Spanish too, he did.
Well, let me ask you
But
this.
my mother speaks French.
The first black millionaire out here, especially female, she was a female, the first black female millionaire in Los Angeles was who?
In Los Angeles, I don't know her name.
That lady,
I don't know her name.
Biddy Mason.
Yeah, Biddy Mason.
Biddy Mason.
Biddy Mason came out here as a slave.
Wow.
And Biddy Mason, she was basically illiterate. I mean, she couldn't write. She signed her name basically with an X. But she was fluent in Spanish out here. See, I'm just trying to...
Out here. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. These areas out here, because when you look at New Orleans, there's a lot of people down there that's bilingual, speak French.
Speaks French.
Yeah,
My mother speaks French.
Like that. See, and because of the economics. What we're talking about is trying to position the next generation so that they can compete in this high tech internet society that we live in now. See. And Los Angeles is such an important city. You got more millionaires and billionaires sitting out here, but at the same time, you got this huge poverty level that you got in places like Skid Row. You know what? Let's take a little quick break because I want to hear this song. You ready?
Yay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Entertainment.
Are we doing it now?
No, yeah. Let's take a little break. Take a little quick break and get this little song, and then we'll come back for some closing
Am I
comments.
going to hear the music out loud, or do I have to hear it
You'll
through here?
hear it.
I can't hear it.
Put on your.
Oh, I have to put on the headphones.
Yeah.
Yep. Trying not to fall here.
There you go.
And then move this up, right? Oh, okay. It's professional. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. There's children out here starving. There's families with no home. There's souls that lost their way, trying to make it on their own. See, it's an everyday struggle, and it's everyone's plight. It's an everyday struggle, so don't give up the fight. Please stop pretending. Please stop ignoring. Most of us are dying every day from the ones that's supposed to protect us. Can we get away? Oh, it's an everyday struggle, and it's everyone's fight. It's an everyday struggle, so don't give up the fight. We gotta come together. Oh, we gotta learn to build with one another. Oh, we gotta come together. Oh, we gotta love one another. What? It's an everyday struggle. It is everyone's fight. It's an everyday struggle, so don't give up the fight.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Girl.
Yeah, but so how did that come about? That particular song. How did you develop that one?
You know what? I got God into my life. And when you get God into your life, he allows you to see certain things with a spiritual eye. And I started seeing the music that I was writing before was based off of flesh stuff. And I wanted to feed the souls, you know. So that's where that song came from. Seeing everything that's going on in this world and being able to reach somebody's soul. Just like how we're talking about racism. I wish to God I could just touch everybody and we only see each other's souls instead of our flesh. Because then we wouldn't be talking about racism. You know?
Okay.
We'd be talking about souls. We'd
Soulism?
be talking about soul.
Okay,
Some souls would be more soulful.
So
that's racist. I'm sorry.
Our last
That's kinda racist.
Our last 5 minutes. Let's go around for some closing comments and how people can get in contact with you. They want to work with you or like that.
Okay. Well, I'm Anaya J. Roots. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Anaya_J Roots. And if you want to book me, hey, book me. And spread agape love, you guys. That means loving people the way God intended you to be loved. Love is the most important element we could ever share with each other. That's all.
All right, that's awesome. You can find me, Google Sonia Bowser, that's SoniaBowser, or The Clubhouse Radio, and that's on most social medias. I just want to touch on the agape love. If we had taken more time to worry about ourselves first and clean up our own houses before we go out the door, again, back to that thing where the problem is so great that we can't fix it right now. We just can't. But if we start with our own homes and our own selves and man, all this hating, greed, and the evil spiritual thing that's going on that you guys don't really understand, I need you to stop with the materialistic stuff and listen. Spiritual warfare we are at, and I need you guys to just love and smile and be happy anyway. Do you. That's it. In a loving way.
Okay.
All I got to say is that I don't have any contacts. Nice song, though, and I'm into music and stuff, so I'll get your information. And the language thing, I think, is it's all. I think we should learn Spanish, or we need to communicate. We have a president that is trying to, in my opinion, regulate what's going on in America, but he's being opposed. Now, I know he's a bit crazy in what he's doing or how he's doing things, but if you look at what he's doing, the thing about America and speaking English and these things that we need to preserve our way of living, that's being given away. And the people that are giving it away are Democratic, liberal people that are saying, come in and do what you want. Human trafficking, all this craziness and violence and stuff are coming in. And it's happening. It's widespread. So it's like we need to do something to try to preserve who we are as Americans. And I don't think that's racist.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would just like to close out by recommending a couple books. The Invention of the White Race by Dr. Theodore Allen, excellent book. Stolen Legacy by Dr. James, which is another excellent book to read. The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Yeah, is one more to read. So I would just like to close out by saying one of our guests mentioned something about emphasizing that there is only one race, the human race. And I think if we understand that, we're moving in the right direction. A special thanks to my in-studio guests. Please listen to past shows of the Qumran Report by Googling in Qumran Report. Thank you for tuning in to the Qumran Report, and from your host, Melvin Ishmael Johnson, may the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. I leave you with Homeboy by Sunji Ali. Thank you.
Homeboy. Homeboy. Brothers, there's only one blood, 'cause it ain't no sense in us traveling on the stove.